On episode 240 of the Tennis Files podcast, you'll learn about the art of deliberate practice and the keys to winning in college and junior tennis with coach Jonathan Stokke. Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. My name is Mehran Aranshad, and today we have a great interview with Jonathan Stokke. And Jonathan hosts the Baseline Intelligence podcast, which is a great show featuring awesome guests like Jessica Pegula, Rajiv Ram, Craig O'Shaughnessy, who's been on the Tennis Summit before, Nick Saviano, and Carlos and Josh Goffey. And I first actually caught wind of Jonathan many years ago when I was in juniors. I had seen his name in the big super national tournaments in the juniors. And it's really cool to come full circle and to interview Jonathan on the show. And he definitely kept up his level. He spent 14 years as both a student athlete and coach with the Duke University men's tennis program. He was a former All-American and two-time All-ACC pick. While at Duke, he was a part of 5 seasons with 20 or more wins and 7 NCAA team championship appearances, including 4 trips to the NCAA round of 16 and 1 NCAA quarterfinal berth. I could go on and on about his playing and coaching accolades, but just to give you one more glimpse, I guess, is that Jonathan posted a 93 and 59 overall singles record and a 113 to 47 doubles mark, ranking 5th all-time on Duke's doubles list. And Jonathan now is a tennis coach in Charleston, and he does a lot of great work online and on Instagram. You should definitely check out his Instagram page, and we'll have links to that page and all of the other links mentioned on the show today. And you're going to learn a lot about how to practice deliberately and make your practices more efficient. And you'll learn a lot about Jonathan's junior and college career and how that can translate into success for yourself. And we are going to do our best to help you improve your game as always. And Jonathan also has some thoughts about online instruction as well, which is definitely very interesting. So definitely a wide-ranging conversation. And also a note that this is part 1 of my interview with Jonathan. We spoke for about 2 hours, so that was really fun and very informative. And I really enjoyed re-listening to our episode. I'm not actually fully finished with re-listening to it myself, but I will get there. So with that, here is my interview, part 1 of my interview with Coach Jonathan Stokke. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the podcast. And I'm really excited and honored to have Jonathan Stokke on the podcast. And it's really cool to connect, Jonathan. Thanks for coming on. I actually remember you from like the junior days, seeing your name in some of the super national tournaments and things like that. And then you obviously went to Duke. Funny story. My senior year of college, we won our conference. And so we actually went to Duke and played you guys. But I don't know that you were on the team, because how old are you right now?
I'm 37. So what year did you come to Duke?
2003.
No, I was if it was spring 2003, I would have been a freshman.
Wait. Oh, I'm sorry. No, my bad. I'm mixing up everything. So let's see. What was high school? My bad. 2007.
2007. Okay, so that was the year after I graduated. So it was a 4-year gap where I played at Duke until 2006, started coaching 2010. So I had a 4-year gap. So you came right in that gap there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that was such a cool experience. Like your campus is really nice and like very classy, like the buildings. But you guys destroyed us. So I went to UMBC. I think you guys were probably like top 10 at that point. Do you remember? Were you top 10 when you were there?
Well, when I was there, we were always in the top 10. I remember there was one week where we took a couple tough losses and we dropped out. And my coach at the time, Jay Lapidus, was like, "I'll talk to you guys when you're back in the top 10. Like that's our standard. And
Standards.
Like, we got it. My senior year, I think we were seeded 3rd going into NCAAs. And so we're always kind of in that 5 to 8 range, and we ended up losing Sweet 16. And then I think when I graduated, we had 5 seniors on the team. So we lost a lot. So I think that next year we were maybe a little bit lower than usual, but then kind of worked our way back up in there.
Nice. Still too good for us mid-major schools. So good stuff, man. Well, yeah, thanks again for coming on. I'm curious, I really enjoy hearing like the the beginnings of my podcast guests on like how they got into playing the sport. So how did you get your start playing tennis?
So I grew up in Long Beach and I played baseball. So my dad played for Southern Cal. He won a national title there, ended up playing minor leagues for a bunch. And so I kind of played everything, a little bit of baseball. And when I was 8, I moved to Chapel Hill and I still played everything, but I became a member of a country club. And I just kind of remember one day, being at the pool and seeing the tennis courts and just kind of going like, like, I don't know, let's go try that. And so I walked out and I gripped my racket like a baseball bat. I had a two-hand forehand, a two-hand backhand, and I was making balls. And I remember just kind of going like, well, now what do you do? And someone said, oh, well, you can play tournaments. So I entered a tournament like a week and a half later, won a couple matches, and it was like, all right, I like this, and then after a year or two, you know how it is with tennis. If you're playing multiple sports, it's pretty difficult. And so kind of by the time I was 12, I said, okay, I'm just going to go the tennis route. It's what I want to do. It's what I need to do to be great. So yeah, I just kind of saw it when I was at the club and picked it up and fell in love immediately.
Awesome. You reminded me of my friend Tread Huey, who's a professional doubles player, and you might have run across him, during your college days as well, when he went to UVA. But I think he played a lot of baseball when he was young, and he has a really good serve. I mean, did you find that helped your serve or your athletic ability overall?
I think tracking the ball and thinking of the sport more in just a competitive mindset. How do I beat my opponent? I was not technical at all. I mean, I told you it was a two-hand forehand, but technically it was a lefty backhand. My right hand was on top.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So no one would accuse me of having good technique. And, I saw the game more from an athletic standpoint where it's like, I got to get the ball in the court and win. That's my goal. Not to look good, not to hit it in the center of the strings, but I just want to walk off the court with a W. So yeah, technically I was a disaster, but I feel like playing other sports allowed me to not obsess on technique and just view it from a competitive, tactical mindset.
Yeah, that's really important. Side note, did you have like a courier backhand? Did it look like that?
No, like my claim to fame is like I would take the racket back low. You know how you're supposed to take it kind of high with a unit turn? Yeah. I would set my racket below my hand straight away. And it was so ugly. And I think it kind of worked to my advantage because when people played me, it looked so bad. They'd get really frustrated when they were losing. I can't believe I'm losing to this guy. Look how ugly his strokes are. And it was aesthetically an F, but they won in the court. So that's all that matters.
Did you like droop your wrist like a lot? Was it super loose type or was it tight? Just curious.
Yeah, it was loose. And, if you freeze a backhand when Novak's kind of dropping below the ball, when his hands are at the biggest part of the drop, that's close to just how I set my racket. Because in my mind, I was like, well, if that's what you want to get into, why would I wait all this time? Why wouldn't I just get in that position? And now I know the reasons for that, but that's kind of how my brain worked at the time. And then once you do it and rep it for a couple of years, it's really difficult to change.
Yeah. Well, simple sometimes works really well. And then like, at what point did you get really serious, like with the sport? I'm curious, in particular, like what your training environment was like and how that progressed for you.
It's interesting. So, I told you I kind of went only to tennis when I was about 12 and I lived in Chapel Hill. I went to normal high school. So, I was practicing an hour to 2 hours a day max, somewhere in between there. And it was just kind of after school. And then I remember my friend and I would just try to go dunk on my backyard basketball hoop for like 2 hours. We would just jump around. That's like literally my athletic activity after school. And then when I was 16, I believe, a junior in high school, my dad got a job in Princeton and I had no interest in moving up north. So I went to the nearest academy at the time, which was Vandermeer in Hilton Head. And when I moved there, then my practice kind of went to more like 2.5 to 3 hours a day. And then I was actually part of the first group of people at Smith Stern's Academy my senior year, and I actually graduated early. And so I was kind of going like 6-7 hours a day, which in hindsight was way too much, but I also got really good that year. So it kind of a give and take, but yeah, most of my junior career is kind of like an hour to an hour and a half a day after school. And then the weekends I would play more, the summers I would play more. But yeah, not as much as a lot of juniors these days.
Gotcha. And so what do you think in your game, I guess at least when you were ranked like really high, and maybe I'll step back, like what were your junior rankings like for each successive year?
Yeah. You're asking me to remember 20 years ago, but I was always, sectionally, I'd be, the top 1, 2, or 3 in the South with guys like Brian Baker.
I remember.
Isner was a year below me, and he was a late bloomer. So when we were 14, 16, he wasn't really at the top of the section. And then nationally, as a first year, I'd be 25 to 30. As a second year, I'd be in that 10 to 15 range. I'd always get to kind of the round of 16 of a national. And then I was very big on like how I saw myself. So if I played someone below me, even if I was ranked 16 and they were 17, I should never lose. I'll beat this guy. He's no good. And then if I played someone who was 10 and they were ranked above me, oh my God, he's so good. How am I going to beat that guy? And so I kind of penciled myself in, I was just routine. Like I rarely got upset, but I also rarely pulled off an upset because I kind of had myself pigeonholed in a certain area, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. After reflecting on that, like what types of advice do you give to your students when they're playing like somebody above? Because, I had this as well, it's like you almost like you lose the match before you step on the court. So what advice do you have for that type of situation?
I think, zero expectations. I should win or I should not win. I mean, what does that even mean? You don't know how your opponent's going to play. You don't know how you're going to play. And, if you play someone who's exactly your level, I think you should win 5 out of 10 times and they should beat you 5 out of 10. And if you play someone better than you, maybe they win 8, but that means you win 2 and you don't know what day it's going to be. And so, you go out, you focus on what you're supposed to be doing. You leave your expectations at the door. You try your hardest. You see what happened in the match. You go back and improve. But I spent a lot of time just, I guess now it'd be UTR. Oh, their UTR is higher. Well, I mean, who knows how they got their UTR? Maybe they got some wins when other people weren't feeling great. And maybe you're low because you haven't played as much. So I think just throwing that all out the window, getting rid of your expectations, focusing on what you can control, and just kind of going from there.
Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, I struggled too when I was a junior and, not as high of a level, but just kind of putting a lot of pressure on myself, depending on where the person was ranked. It was funny when you go ahead. Sorry.
The funny thing is like one thing I also remind people when you're playing someone better, if I was the 1 seed in the sectional tournament and I played someone below me, I was scared to death. I was nervous. I mean, I'm going, man, I can't lose to that guy. I mean, he's ranked 20, I'm 1, or, I know I'm better than him. That'd be terrible. And so I was very, very nervous. And so I asked my players now, well, if you're playing someone who's ranked above you, how do you think they're feeling? How do you feel when you play someone lower than you? You usually get tight too, right? So there's a really good chance your opponent is scared of you. I mean, you might have doubts about them, but they certainly have doubts about you. And once you remember that, it kind of relaxes you a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny because I was Googling your name because like in my junior career, I got to play one Super National, which was at Woodmont Country Club in Rockville for the 16s, which was a really cool experience for me. And I remember seeing I think James Wan beat Sukwa Young in that. But I noticed John Isner, and he was like the 17th seed and he lost in like quarters or something. So just really amazing, to see like you said, like late bloomers, like just popping up like that. And how does that work? Like, I mean, was it just his game wasn't ready for that type of level of tennis at that age yet? And then, it just, blooms later or what?
So John and I have probably played 20 times in juniors. Wow. So he was from Greensboro. I was from Chapel Hill. Yeah. He was a year younger. He played basketball a fair amount, like later into his career. So I don't think he was giving it the attention. And he also, he wasn't whatever he is now, 7 feet. He was like, he was tall for his age, but he was, 6'2", something like that. And, I remember we beat John, and his partner was Brett Ross, a good friend of mine who ended up coaching at Wake Forest with me. But we beat them in the finals of Kalamazoo in 2002. And I remember that year and kind of the one before is when John grew a little bit and also was kind of making that leap to where you're going, oh, now he's really good. He's a good player. And then I remember when he came to college and was a freshman right away, we were like, oh, all right, got it. He's already one of the best players. And so I think with him, it was, he grew into his body a little bit. And then I think he got rid of some of the other sports and probably dedicated himself a little more. But yeah, that was interesting because I always owned him when we were 14. So I'll say I have wins over John, but certainly not when he got to be what he is now. So yeah.
Yeah. Cool stuff. So as far as your game, I'm curious, like, are you a serve and volleyer or what, aggressive, all court? What's your game?
So when I was younger, I was get the ball and play and grind. I was a good athlete, and I think I intuitively understood that the game is won by people missing. So if I don't miss and I can get to a lot of balls, I'm going to win a lot of matches. And so I think until I was about 14, 15, that was my objective. Just, I had a pretty good serve, but get the ball in and that's it. I don't have to do much. That person on the other side of the net is dying to miss. I just have to give them the opportunity. I just can't beat them to that. Right. And then once I got older and, USTA coaches and, different coaches of mine kind of said, okay, well, if you want to, be a great college player and maybe have a chance at pro, you're going to have to do a little bit more. And so started working on serve and volleying, chipping and charging. Back then, that was actually a possibility. And so learning to kind of blend those two styles was difficult. I didn't know when to use which one. And there was a kind of a year or two where my identity was a little muddied. But by the time I got to college, my coach, Jay Lapidus, his thing was like, hey, 3 balls or less. Like, I want you winning the point or losing the point with 3 shots. And wow. That's really how the game is played anyway. But I would serve and volley. I would take second serves, come in. The first time you gave me a 50-50 ball, I'd crack it in a corner, try to come in. And guys hated playing me. Like, there was no rhythm. They're spending the whole day under pressure trying to pass. And even when they're winning points, they're not getting to do what they want to do. So, it kind of evolved. When I was younger, it was all about making balls. And by the time I was a senior in college, it was just first strike, right to the point.
Gotcha. Actually, speaking of which, didn't Joey Addis play with you guys?
He joined, I think we only had 1 year together. I believe we had one. So he and I played my senior year together, and we made All-American doubles. And he transferred from Ohio State, but I'm pretty sure we only shared 1 year together. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Now I remember he went to Ohio State first. Yeah. So he was a serve volleyer, and I played him maybe once or twice, but I just remembering like, God, this guy's just bringing the pressure, serve and volley every time. I got to like pick some targets here. And so, yeah, that's a great style to play. A pro tour, like you said, it's a lot tougher, I guess, but
yeah. But we all like Cressy now. All the old serve and volley.
Yeah. I love
Cressy
it.
And
exactly.
Yeah.
So much fun to watch him. And curious about like your family environment, because sometimes it varies with like, how much hands-on or hands-off your parents are, for example. So were your parents like pretty like into tennis, and did they like, did you feel like any pressure from them, or were they just like, do your thing?
It's interesting. So my dad would go to most of the tournaments with me. My mom has no idea. I mean,
same.
If I walked off the court, oh, your opponent was left-handed? I had no idea. Like, that's cool. Like, that's fun. Like, she was not paying attention. My dad, I said he was a great baseball player, so he knew athletics, and he picked up a little bit of tennis, but, in hindsight, like, what a great tennis parent, right? Like, he held me to a standard of my effort and my attitude. Sportsmanship was a huge thing for them, but he never really, I had some bad matches, and okay, you played a bad match. You played a bad match in a recreational sport. Like, okay, like that's that happens, and then go out and try again. The only thing they wouldn't, accept was poor effort. So there were definitely times, I'm not proud of this, but, in backdrop matches where I'm like, oh man, I already lost, I'm out, and kind of hanging my head a little bit. And maybe I'd lose the match I shouldn't. And my dad would kind of be like, hey, I know what you look like when you're engaged. You weren't engaged. And I might kind of fight back because I'm a teenager. And then afterwards I'd be like, yeah, you're right. I didn't do a good job. And, but they were great. But I also think no matter how great your parents are, you always want to please your parents. I mean, they flew you to a tournament. They paid money for a hotel. Yeah. Even if they're the best, you still feel pressure to live up to that commitment, So I felt the pressure, but I would also say my parents as tennis parents were fantastic.
Nice. I love that. Love that. And then let's see. So in terms of college, like how did that go? And as far as like your possibilities, like who recruited you, and like what made you decide to go to Duke?
So, I grew up in Chapel Hill. So I was actually hitting at the UNC facility like all through high school, which is ironic. And then I knew at a young age that I did not want to try to play pro. So I was I was going, all right, well, I want to go to a school that's still good because I'm competitive, but also that could help me academically if I decide not to stay in coaching or whatever. So I was looking at Duke and Stanford. Okay, they're both top 10 academically and athletically. Obviously, Duke was just on the road for me. I had a couple friends who ended up going there, so that was a nice little connection. So I actually had my visits scheduled for Duke, Georgia, and Illinois. And Illinois, I knew my doubles partner, Rajiv Ram, he went there. So I was like, oh, maybe we can play doubles. I kind of knew they'd win NCAAs that first year. I mean, they were loaded. I didn't think I would play singles. But for me, that was like purely a tennis move, right? Like the degree at Duke compared to the degree at Illinois that I could get. I was like, okay, that's a tough one. So I actually just went to Duke on my first visit, and I was like, hey, if I like it, I'm just not going to waste the other coach's time.
Nice.
So I took one visit. I went there. I loved it. I knew what I wanted. I could have gone to Georgia for a fun weekend, but ultimately I knew what I was looking for. And, so I made a quick decision, and it was a great decision for me.
Awesome, man. Awesome. I'm glad it worked out very well for you, obviously. To take one step back to junior tennis again, I'm curious if you could, like, I guess in a sense, package, some advice for junior tennis players and parents. What would be your keys to success in junior tennis?
I wouldn't really care about a result before the age of 16.
Yeah.
They're all trying to go to school. So fine. When you're a sophomore or junior in high school, coaches start to pay attention. But I remember I was living and dying, with 12-year-old state tournaments. Yeah. And I go, man, like I spent a lot of time being nervous about something that really didn't matter at all. And I didn't change things or improve things in my game because I was so scared I might lose one of those events. I mean, I can't even remember those matches now. So I think the patience, and especially younger, just, am I getting better? And, oh, I lost and I'm only ranked 50 in the country, or 100 or 200. Okay, who cares? That's fine. So kind of playing the long game with that. And then I would also say, having enthusiasm and passion is really important to that improvement. So you have to figure out what the right amount of practice time is. I see a lot of people thinking they have to play 3 hours a day to get better. I was top 10 in the country playing an hour and a half, so do you have to do that? No, you don't. And the problem I see sometimes is kids play so much, they lose that enthusiasm, and then it's hard for them to improve because they're not that engaged.
Yeah, no, I love that. Love that advice there. Yeah, it's really important, in the juniors. Like if I could go back, I would just like work 100% on skills and just developing things. Cause like I was the same, just trying to get the ball back and win points only. And, I'd see some of my peers who I was beating in like the 12s and 14s. All of a sudden in the 16s and 18s, they would be acing me, left and right. And they had developed, those important shots and whatnot. And I was still, in this like grinder mode. So,
Well, I think it also, it also depends what your goal is, right? So,
right.
If your goal is to play college tennis, well, I mean, I can tell you as a college coach recruiting, if I look at the tennis recruiting list, their senior year, and then I look at how they did in college, it doesn't look anything like it because people every 2 years, they're making jumps. Some people get worse, some people get better.
True.
But I thought I had to be the number one junior in the country at 14 if I wanted to be any good. Well, that is irrelevant because by 16, that whole group looked different. And by 18, there was another group. And then by the time we got to college, like the Isner example, well, now he's ahead of everybody. Well, which one matters more, how you are in college or how you are when you were 12? I'll take the college player. And then if you want to play pro, does it even matter what you play like at age 20? Probably matters what you play like at age 25. So I think just knowing what your goal is and then, having perspective and going, hey, you know what? If I'm taking a step to achieve that goal, then I'm on the right path. And winning a junior tennis match usually is irrelevant on that path.
Yeah, love that. It's great advice. And you did mention deliberate practice, which we're definitely going to get into very soon. I'll ask you about, but I'm curious about college tennis as well. So what makes college tennis just unique from all other environments, junior tennis and professional and so forth?
Clearly the team aspect is unique. You're around 8 to 10 other kids that are probably very, very close to your level. And depending on where you are in that group, there might be a lot of people better than you. And if, when in my case, we were going to a top 10 team at Duke, each guy on that team was probably the biggest fish in their small pond, wherever they were from. And now you go to a big team and now you're all big fish in the, small pond. You're going, man, where do I stack up? And it's not all about you anymore. There's 10 other guys. And so a practice is designed for everybody. And so some parts of that might not be great for your personal game. Some of it may be great. So that's unique. It's weird. No one's given me a good answer for this and I can't either, but in junior tournaments, you might play 2 or 3 singles matches in a day and a doubles match. And you were fine and you were 16, 17. And then you go to college and you play a dual match and it's just exhausting, and you're like, man, I only played 2 out of 3 sets, no ad, and a set of doubles, no ad. Like, how did that get me tired? But I think it's the emotion that those dual matches have. And, you have 1 or 2 matches every week. So it's just continuous. You never get that month to just kind of like catch your breath. Once you're in the spring, it's a couple duels every week, and that wears on you a little bit as well. But I think most people finish college and go, that was, that environment so much more fun than juniors.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're right. Like you can play endless amounts of practice sets, but then you up the intensity and then you can play less. And then now you add the crowds and like just how tense you can be, like trying to fight for your school. And then that's even more difficult. So, excuse me. So what would you say are the most important traits of a successful college tennis player?
Good question. I know from experience, they come in all different shapes and sizes. So, I recruited guys who were, 5'5" and had no serve. And I remember clearly, I won't say the guy's name, but I remember clearly watching him at Kalamazoo going, this guy is never going to win in college. I mean, I don't understand it. He was a great junior. He won a lot of matches. And I was like, man, he's so small. Like college guys are going to kill him. And he went to UCLA and he killed everybody. He was awesome. And I was like, you're an idiot. Like what kind of talent evaluator are you? So, I've seen guys with big serves fail. I've seen them succeed. I've seen little guys who you think don't have enough punch and they go there and I'm right. They don't have enough punch and sometimes they do. And so I don't think there's 1 or 2 things that apply to everybody. Generally speaking, I would say first thing, I want a kid to have a great mind. Emotionally mature. They know their game style. They pay attention to their opponent. They know how to problem solve. You give me that skill, and I think almost any type of style can win in college. Maybe not at 1 singles, but you got a problem solver who's a competitive athlete. They can win at 6. I've seen a lot of funny things happen at 6 singles, even in the top 10 in the country. The other 2 physical skills that I would say, serve clearly. If you can you can start to point on offense, it's pretty tough to lose your serve. And then the second thing is someone who's a great mover. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're so fast. It means that they get in position for the ball. So you show me a kid who's got a good serve, can move around the court, strike the ball in the same place most of the time, and then has amazing head on their shoulders. I go, that kid's probably going to be pretty good.
Yeah, that's great stuff. And while you were giving me an answer, I remember that it's kind of interesting, not very scientific, but I emailed like 70 different college coaches, like in 2015, asking them like the most important traits of a successful college tennis player. And they said, well, by my tallies, I have work ethic was the top one, and then competitive, and then their integrity. But yeah, it's interesting to look back on that. But, everybody is curious about like the serve. The serve is so difficult. Like, can you give us like maybe one or two of your golden tips based on your experience, like helping, tons of students out on like, some critical keys for the serve?
Right. It's, like I said, it's the most important stroke. You can, once you know what you should be working on, you can go work on it on your own. So to me, there's no excuse to have a really poor serve. The thing I see a lot with my kids now is the toss. And the biggest thing with the toss is people just launch it into the air as high as they can. And it's tough to time. And, I've kind of done a bunch of research lately, and a couple people smarter than myself have brought it to my attention and said, hey, you really only need to toss as high as you can reach and extend up. And the lower toss keeps your swing fluid. Wind doesn't affect it. Your timing and your rhythm are the same. It's tough for your opponent to read where you're going. And it's just going to be more consistent day to day than if you're launching that toss 5 feet above where your contact point is. Then it's got to drop 5 feet. So that's an additional 10 feet that you're waiting on. And that gives you a lot of time to do some weird things with your racket while you're waiting. So that's one that I see pretty consistently. The other common one is just trying to keep your palm down, that throwing motion. And a lot of people in the beginning open up their palm, they get tension in their shoulder. They don't swing as fast. I know I did that as a junior as well. It's very natural, but I think if you can get that palm down mastered and you get a nice low consistent toss, that's, a low toss, maybe that's not the right way to say it, but you want to toss as high as you can extend. If you're tossing at least that high, it's high enough. And so I think those two things are pretty important for a good serve.
Yeah. Great tips. I think it was Vic Braden that also pointed out that, like say if you have a high toss, like when you're hitting it, the ball is like dropping like pretty fast. But, if you toss at your apex or whatever, at, the proper height, but, not too high, then it actually like hangs at that point for a little while. So that.
Right. I think the way it was explained was when you have a lower toss, you actually have less time to swing, but you have a longer amount of time where the ball is sitting in your sweet spot because the ball is not dropping as quickly. So I think that's where people get, once they lower their toss, they go, oh, I feel so rushed. And I go, yeah, that makes sense. You're swinging much faster than you used to, but you look smooth. And by the way, that ball is now sitting on a tee for you, which will make it easier day to day to hit a good serve.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite tips. Like when I made that adjustment, it instantly I had like more heat on my serve. And, like you said, there was less pausing and hitching and all this stuff. Good stuff. So yeah, let's talk about deliberate practice, Jonathan. So, I mean, first off, let's try to define that and then, explain like why it's so important.
Right. So, my favorite book as far as something that helps me with coaching is Peak by Anders Ericsson. And, I read that and, I'll forget some of the, core principles in it, but basically it was, that's where Malcolm Gladwell got the 10,000 hour rule. Right. But it's kind of incomplete because if you just go out and hit balls for 10,000 hours, you don't get that good. And my golf game is a testament to that. Like I don't practice deliberately when I practice golf. I just go out and hit balls. And so I'm about the same golfer that I've always been. But, deliberate practice is awesome because conceptually it's anyone can be elite at anything. Sure, I'll never be an NBA player because I'm 6'2". Fine. There are some things like that, but almost anyone can develop a great serve. You just have to practice the right way. And part of that method is, okay, I've got to have a clear goal. What's my goal? I want to be able to have my palm down, and I need to be getting constant feedback on that from a professional or myself using a camera, but constant feedback. I need to constantly be out of my comfort zone, right? I need to be uncomfortable. I need to be challenging myself constantly. And part of that is that it's not very fun to be in that mode. And so that's a big reason why people don't practice deliberately, is they want comfort. They want to feel good. And so they go out on the tennis court and I want the ball to feel good today. And I go, well, okay, but if you're trying to be good in 6 months, you have to work on your palm down. And by the way, today you're going to hit a bunch of terrible serves. But long term, it's going to be good for you. And deliberate practice is very uncomfortable. And so people shy away from it. And that's why you see 3-5 players at the club who are always 3-5 players. They never become 4-0s. But how can that be, right? Because they've been practicing and playing all these matches, but they're not practicing and playing the right way. So, like I said, having a clear objective, getting consistent feedback, being completely immersed in the process, and challenging yourself so much that it's uncomfortable and in fact not enjoyable, and then doing that time after time for 10,000 hours, that process can get you what you want.
Is there a way to also make things that are not enjoyable, like to make them somewhat enjoyable? And if that makes sense?
It does. I mean, and this is a talk I have with most of the kids I teach, is, so for me, when I was playing, I wanted to win Kalamazoo. So if you told me, okay, well, if you want to win Kalamazoo, you have to run these sprints and you have to do this practice, which isn't that fun. Well, I didn't care because what I wanted was so valuable, I would do anything. So sure, the actual act of running a sprint is not enjoyable. But what's enjoyable is me feeling like I got closer to what I want. So in some cases, sure, maybe you can make it a game or you can challenge yourself. But at the end of the day, it's like, is the juice worth the squeeze? Like if you're working so hard, that's why I don't practice deliberately with my golf game, because I don't care what I shoot. So why would I want to go make myself miserable in the driving range, really focusing when I actually don't care about the outcome? So I think it's important for everyone. Some people just want to play tennis recreationally, and that's great. Then I wouldn't practice deliberately because that's a painful process. I would just have fun when you practice. But if your goal is to be a pro or to be a high level D1 player, then your practice is going to be uncomfortable. But I think you should know in that process that you're a step closer and that's enjoyable. But I mean, I don't know many players who just said, man, I really love running sprints. Like the act of running a sprint is just a blast. I don't know that you can trick yourself into thinking that's fun.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. It's really helpful to have those, goals in mind, like Kalamazoo. Like, I guess the most recent for me is like when I had like sectionals. So I play a lot of USTA league, matches and stuff. So, when I normally like, training and all that, it's not so exciting, but like when I had sectionals coming up, like you get like really amped up and you want to do well. So then it really helps you to train. So let's see here. In terms of, parents as well, it's kind of, I guess, stepping back to junior tennis, like what are the biggest mistakes, that parents make, when they're trying to help their junior player?
It's funny. I just talked to Carlos and Josh Goffey about this in particular last week. And, junior parents make a bunch of mistakes, but they're usually on accident, right? They just want what's best for their kid and they're not doing it on purpose. I think one thing is talking about the matches. The match ends and you go out there and you want to give your opinion on what happened. And I mean, most of the time you're not a tennis coach. And most of the time the kid doesn't want to hear it right after a match. And so it's like, what is that process doing there? Like, why are we doing that? Let the kid talk to the coach and let the kid breathe a little bit. That's a big one. I think some parents, like I said earlier, are very into the results when they're younger. Oh my God, they're not winning when they're 14. Oh my God, are they doing okay? Yeah, they're doing fine. As long as they're working hard and they're on a path, yeah, they're doing great. Oh, but they're not winning. Who cares? And that's easier for me to say because I've been through it and I've seen a bunch of kids. So I understand why that anxiety is there, but I think they want to feel like their kid is always doing the best. That's a big thing. And I just encourage all parents. It's tough. You have to find a coach you trust and you have to trust your kid a little bit, but you kind of remove yourself from the process and just say, hey, as long as my kid is trying like crazy and they're engaged and they're being a good sport, then they're being successful. And after that, I trust them and their coach to work on improving. But I see too many parents just getting involved almost on the coaching side and really focusing on the result, which can be pretty toxic.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm grateful, like you as well, to have gone through it. So now I know, hopefully, not going when I have a kid, I can when they're playing, I can just be relaxed and not worry about like them winning or losing so much, but just developing their skills. And in terms of, I know I'm kind of jumping around a bit here, but back to deliberate practice. What would you say the most common things that players do during practice that is a big waste of time?
I mean, I think your whole practice is a waste of time if you're not focused. Okay. So I think people come out all the time and they're thinking about their school and they're talking to a friend and they're kind of on autopilot, and you can't get better on autopilot. You just can't. So you can maintain your skills, but if you're on autopilot over time, you're just getting really good at what you already are. So that's a big thing. And that's a big waste of time. Like you said, college coaches, you asked them what the 3 things were. And I think all 3 were a mentality or an emotional. It was integrity. I think you said work ethic and one more. But if you ask a player what they're working on, I guarantee you they're not going to say something between their ears. I'm working on my forehand. I'm working on my serve. Those are all important, but they're not a waste of time. But I would say a better use of your time would be, hey, let me spend half of my focus in tennis on becoming a great competitor. And let me spend half that time on how I handle failure, because I'm going to lose almost half the points every time I play. That would be a better use of time than thinking about your forehand for an hour straight. Like, winning tennis matches isn't who has the best forehand. Sometimes it is, but most of the time it's not. It's not always who has the best serve. Otherwise, Isner would be one in the world, or Opelka, whoever it is. It's a collection of things, and a mentality is so important. And yet that is just not stressed, and very few kids value that the way a coach would. So, that's a better way to use your time on the court, is to be super engaged and to spend at least part of every practice going, my number one objective is my mentality or my routine in between the point, or how I'm practicing my strategy, and like specifically allocating time to the mental game.
That's really good. Yeah. That would be a great one, actually, that I see like nobody practicing, which is, I guess, when you're playing practice sets or even, baseline games, it's like in between point routine to help you refocus yourself and think about the next point. That would be awesome. Yeah, it's interesting. Like a couple of weeks ago, before a league match, this is a shameless self-promotion, but I was listening to one of my own podcast episodes with like a mental game expert, Jeff Greenwald, about just resiliency and like playing well in critical moments. And it really actually helped my mindset. And, I was down 3-6, 1-3, and then ended up coming back. And I just kind of want to highlight the importance of like, the mental game training and how important that is. And, a lot of times it's going to be even skill, or even if not even skill, just who wants it more and who is able to perform during the tough moments, and by focusing on the process and executing the game plan rather than the externals. So it
sounds so cliche, but I saw someone post this on Instagram the other day. It's like, if at first you don't succeed, just do what your coach told you to do the first time. And it's like, it almost sounds cliche in coach speak, but we're like, oh yeah, focus on what you can control. And hey, let's have a good attitude. That helps. Like, we're not saying that to waste time. Like, it's a really big part of success. And yet the player, and I understand it, can get obsessed with how they feel and how the ball feels on their strings. And you're going, man, if your goal is to win, then focus on your mindset, focus on your tactics, focus on how you manage yourself emotionally. And sure, of course, you're going to work on your strokes too, but you can win a match when you don't hit the ball as well as the other person. Like that can happen. So why not? Let's go for the low hanging fruit that you can super control yourself and focus on that. But it's tough, right? Like you said, you've even listened to your own podcast and you weren't taking your advice before that. And I know I've had instances like that in my life when I was playing where I didn't do the things I knew I should be doing, but it's critical and coaches say it. I think players just think you're saying it to, I don't know, it's just a cliche, but it's not. It's what wins if what gets you better.
Yeah, 100%. And, that being said, with highlighting how important the mental game is, do you have any favorite drills, games, or any other just like advice in general for amateur players to implement during practice that would make it more effective?
One, you're saying a game that specifically helps with the mental side?
No, just in general, like to make the practice more efficient and deliberate. And any particular drills or anything else that you like?
One drill that we've done a couple times is we play a point. A lot of times we have 4 kids on a court. So they'll play a baseline point or a serve point. And then I make the player who played the point look at their partner and say what happened.
Oh,
I made a serve out wide. They returned middle. I hit a short ball in the middle of the court and they missed their approach. Okay. Because in the beginning, it's actually very hard for them. I could probably tell you 8 shots every point. And then I could probably go back and tell you what happened 5 points ago. But I've learned very quickly, if you ask a junior player what happened 3 seconds ago, that's actually not an easy question at first. And so I'm going, how are you not picking up on these patterns? But the reason is because they don't even know what happened. It's gone. It disappeared. That point happened. It's in the past. So we have them play a game, no rules. And we just say, tell me what happened. And you'll find out a lot of times patterns emerge. I missed a forehand long. I missed a forehand long. I missed a forehand long. And then you go, okay, cool. What adjustment are you going to make? And so that's one that gets them mentally engaged. And then we like to do a lot of stuff where we get bonus points and getting them focused on a specific thing. So one game we like to play is 3-2-1 when they're serving. You get 3 points if your opponent misses one of their first 2 shots. You get 2 points if you hit a winner on one of your first 2 shots. And you get 1 point for everything that goes past 4 shots. And so the focus for them is, man, you're going to realize there's a lot of 3-pointers. Like that's the game of tennis. There's a lot of missing in the first 4 shots.
Yeah.
And so that makes them super aware. I walk around the game, I just keep yelling, oh, that's 3, that's 3. And I want them to know there's not many 2s out there, especially in junior tennis. There's not a lot of aces. There's not a lot of +1 winners, but there are a lot of double faults. There are a lot of missed returns, and there are a lot of missed +1 balls. And so that just gets them thinking constantly when they have to add up the points. I made another +1 error. I missed another return. And it keeps them very engaged in kind of the correct style of play.
Yeah, I like that. I think we probably both know about Craig O'Shaughnessy, and I think it's something like 80% of the points and in the 4 shots or less, something like that. So yeah, cool. Good stuff there. And as far as like online instruction, I was curious about your thoughts about that. You're obviously like, online, you do a great job on your Instagram page. I see a lot of, clips on there. So everybody should definitely check out Jonathan's Instagram page. But what are your thoughts on the effectiveness of online instruction and, any possible, issues or perils about it?
So it's a great resource. There are some challenges, right? So, I was actually talking to another coach I work with. Like, if you don't know anything about tennis and you went on Instagram or YouTube and you Googled how to hit a better forehand and you watch a video, how would you know if the advice is correct or not? You don't know anything about a forehand. So how would you know if they're telling, if someone said, hey, you should really have your palm up on a serve, that's a great idea. And you don't know anything about tennis. How would you know that's a bad idea? So It's a really difficult space to know who actually knows what they're doing and who is just out there, presenting half truths. That's a very difficult thing. And so I'm sympathetic to people or empathetic and saying, well, man, how would you know what's correct. My advice there would be look at the track record of the coach, right? And then be able to figure out if what they're saying is rooted in some sort of fact or science, either biomechanically or that something's been proven. Because a lot of times you can disprove, the people out there that don't really know what they're doing. But it's difficult. I mean, I've learned a ton. I mean, there's a couple people, Kyle Lacroix, I met him through Instagram. He's taught me a lot over the last 6 months, some things I had never heard of. And so there's great stuff out there. It's just, I would go and, kind of cross-reference a bunch, fact check it. Oh, I saw Stokke said this about the serve. Well, let me go to this other site and see what they say. Oh, they said the same thing. Interesting. And then go to a third site. Oh, palm down, still palm down, palm down, palm down. Huh. Okay. That's probably one I want to look into. And if you see something once, it's probably not based in any fact or science, and it probably hasn't worked because, other people aren't adopting that. But it's a great resource. I mean, I do the same thing. That's why I love golf. For me, I get in the mind of a novice tennis player because I don't know much about golf. So if I go on YouTube and I'm looking about my driver swing, I go on there and I go, how do I know if this guy even knows what he's talking about? And so I start playing around with my own swing, and it's a slippery slope, but I would just cross-reference things and see how much common themes there are amongst each site.
Yeah, that's great advice, Jonathan. So kind of on that same track, like what resources do you most study in order to, I know you mentioned Kyle's, page, but what resources are your favorite for learning more about the game?
So, I took the PTR course, Great Base. I don't know if you've heard of Great Base Tennis. They have a great free online course. Yeah. They've got great stuff.
I've had on my podcast.
Vic Braden. Yeah, a lot of Vic Braden stuff. They had awesome things that I had learned for the first time. Like I said, Kyle, he's been great. Like he'll send me all his presentations that he does at USPTA. He's like the greatest guy. And, reading online, but the information is out there. You just have to be willing to open your mind and learn and challenge your, existing beliefs. I know that I used to think I did certain things on my volley. And then after looking at videos of myself and hearing other people explain it, I'm like, I was coaching something that I've never done. Like, that's not what I do. And so you just have to be open and willing and consistently eager to learn and, keep seeking out resources. Instagram is great. Great Base, that free online course. I would encourage anyone to take that. There's great things in there. But you just have to be willing and open-minded to seek out that information that's out there.
Awesome. Yeah, I made a note about that, the Great Base course, and shout out to Steve Smith, who I had on episode, I just Googled it, 214 of the podcast. So awesome. Jonathan, you've been coaching for a while now, with Duke and with players and all that. Is there any particular, a philosophy that you had maybe when you were like a younger coach that maybe you changed over time after, experience and studying and all that?
I'm sure there's a bunch. I know that I've changed so much from age. I was coaching Duke when I was 26. That was my first year there. And I was coaching at Wake when I was 24. So, 13 years ago, like I would hope that I'm a much better coach than I was then and have learned some more. But one thing I know recently is I used to tell my guys at Duke on second serves, let's hang back. Let's hit a heavy forehand deep middle. Let's make sure we make as many as we can and then put pressure on them to win their ground stroke point. And now my philosophy is completely different. And, Craig O'Shaughnessy talked about it. I had Jessie Pagula on my podcast. She talked about it. Hey, we're attacking second serves. That is, your opponent is usually thrown in something weak. It's okay if I miss a few. I want that person to feel crazy pressure when they're hitting a second serve. And, my guys at Duke would be like, I used to fight with one guy. He was our number one and he always wanted to attack. And I'd be like, no, hang back. Like just hit heavy. And he would like, I don't know, roll over right now if he knew that I was completely, coaching the opposite way now. But yeah, I'm all into attacking it now and putting them under pressure. But most of what changes my mind, like I said, is something that's fact-based. So when I see data from the tour and I see what players are doing, if it contradicts what I used to believe, okay, well, now I believe something new because someone proved to me there's a better way. And that has certainly happened, but I'd say that second serve example is a pretty good one.
That's pretty neat. Yeah, that's good to know about. Yeah, as a server, I hate it when somebody is like putting a lot of pressure on me on the second serve. It's it rushes everything. Um, in terms of your podcast, so actually, you know what? Let's back up and actually let's see your origin story with online first, and then we'll get into your awesome podcast. But I'm curious, like what what inspired you to get on Instagram? There's obviously, like, I don't know, millions of coaches or whatever, or thousands, but and you're doing really well on it. I think you have maybe like 34,000 or so. Hopefully I'm not mis saying that, but what motivated you to put yourself on online, and then how has that been for you? Because it's not easy to be posting frequently and gaining these subscribers. You're not gaining them for nothing. You're doing a lot of great stuff. So how did that all come about?
So I left Duke. The pandemic started in spring of 2020, and that was my 10th year at Duke, and I left Duke, and I moved to Charleston, and I was coaching juniors and ended up coaching two girls privately, Claudia and Vivian Miller. Claudia is at Middlebury now. Vivian is going to go to Brown next fall. And I was coaching them kind of on like a little public court on Sullivan's Island near Charleston. And their dad was like, hey, you got to come up with an Instagram page because no one knows you exist. Like in Charleston, like you're going to have to coach other people once my daughters, kind of graduate and leave. And I'm like, I hate social media. I never post. Like, why would I do that? Yeah, exactly. And so I started a page. If you look back it's at Stokke Tennis. If you look back at, my first posts, they're very different than what I'm doing now. And basically I just started the page and I would follow everyone who I could see in Charleston area who was following tennis stuff. So if you were a member of a tennis club, I would just click follow, kind of like a little nudge, and go, hey, I exist, and happy to coach you if you want. And that was kind of why I started it. And then, one day I made a little reel about Claudia working on her backswing, and it got a couple thousand views. And I was like, okay, that was kind of fun. And yeah. And then I started doing a few more of those, and then I'd get messages from people and they'd say, hey, I saw that video. It really helped me. Like, that was awesome. Thanks, man. And I'm like, hey, that made me feel great. I'll do another one. Sure. And then it just kind of took off. And, so I do like 4 or 5 videos a week. The funny thing is the kids love it. I usually have a kid in my, it's a drill of a kid doing something, and they love being in the videos, and, now they're all trying to get in it, but it's pretty funny. But, it started out as a way I video everything. So I want to see how their stroke looks. So I always have this footage of them. And then sometimes it's something that I could actually throw on social media and someone else could learn from it. But yeah, it started off like just, hey, I'm just this little coach and coaching on a public court, and it's kind of grown into something different than that. But the most rewarding thing has been that I get messages from, people I don't know all the time saying, man, that one really helped me out. Or, can you do a video on this? Cause I struggle with this type of thing in my game. And, helping people I don't know has been super fun for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's the most rewarding part of it. Curious too, like in terms of your setup, what do you use to record?
I've got like a $25 tripod that will fall over in the wind. I got to put like my hoodie and my pants and my tennis bag at the base so it doesn't fall over. My phone I don't know how it survived. It's fallen down so many times, but I put my iPhone in a tripod and I just film. And like I said, I'm filming their serve, I'm filming their ground stroke from the side. So I have all this catalog for each player, what their strokes have looked like. And then occasionally the camera angle or whatever, I go, oh, that could be a great video. Like someone else can learn from that. But yeah, super simple. Just the iPhone and the little tripod mount.
Awesome. Yeah, it's definitely want to highlight that again, probably for the 1,000th time on the podcast, just like how easy it can be to record yourself, which is super valuable. Do you use any sort of like apps or anything for analyzing the video or stats or notes or anything?
So, I've used Coach's Eye before if I'm, sending it to a kid and using it for technique. I actually just got this cool product. I don't think it's out for release now. It's called Baseline Vision, and you actually hook it up on the, end of a net post. And that kind of tracks where you're hitting the ball, how fast, how high. It's a different way to do the same thing. So I'm definitely interested in that. I'm interested in things that can be measured. If how do I tell you your serve's going faster if I can't prove it? I want to be able to prove it. Hey, it's 7 miles an hour faster. That's a big deal. So yeah, I use stuff like that. As far as technology goes, it's pretty much just the phone and looking at it and slowing it down. I don't think you have to overcomplicate it. Something with Coach's Eye where you can draw on it and show them, hey, here's your elbow position or here's your racket position. Just the visual for a player usually gets the job done.
Yeah.
And then I also do, I'll video a lot of matches and chart, but that's all by hand. There's no technology there. It's just watching the match and collecting points that look the same and then showing that to the kid. But that's actually pretty labor intensive. But I find that's actually where they make the biggest gains, especially tactically.
Awesome. Yeah, true. Very true. When you videotape the matches, is that a different setup or do you still have the tripod behind or are you like clamping it to the fence or something?
I've got these old, it's like a movie. I think it's an MUVI VHO little camera. It's been around forever. It's only like $150. They're super durable. I put one of those camera poles on the top. So it's not my iPhone.
There you
go. But it gets the whole cord in there. I used to send it to Tennis Analytics or Scissor. Now I'll just, I only have a few kids that kind of need that type of work. So I'll send it with them to a tournament, come back, watch the match, see what we were working on. It's not debatable, right? When you show a kid what's actually happening, like how can you argue? You hit 10 forehand winners to this side. That's what we've been working on. It's awesome. You missed 10 backhand returns in the net. Okay. Like that happened also. And so video is just amazing. It's just an impartial, this is what happened. This is what needs to improve. And you go from there. But if you're not videoing things and you're not tracking things, I think along with that deliberate practice aspect, it's pretty tough to improve.
Yeah, 100%. And, Jonathan, as far as like using your phone, like, you obviously teach a lot of students and probably use your phone as well. So do you have like some sort of external battery pack or how do you keep that thing going the whole day?
My phone, it must have just like so much heart and grit because like I said,
like yourself.
I mean, like the phone has fallen off the little tripod and it sounded like it shattered into a million pieces. And I'm like, okay, this was the day it finally cracked. And I'll look at it and it's fine. And, I'm out there 8 to 10 hours a day, videoing a fair amount. And usually by the time I get home, it's at, 15, 20%. But I've never run out of battery. Knock on wood, the phone hasn't cracked, but wow. Maybe it's just a special phone that I should never get rid of. It's the iPhone 10. It's not even a new one, but it gets the job done. That's
amazing. Do you have I hope you have a case on it. Do you have a case and screen protector?
I wouldn't even know. I've got a case that kind of holds some credit cards. I don't know. It must be durable because it's worked well. I think I have a screen. I'm not good with this stuff. That's why it's hilarious that like I'm making these Instagram videos on my phone. Like I've got no idea what's going on with the phone.
You're a role model, Jonathan. See, anyone can do it.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're not a tech nerd like myself, that's physically apparent, I guess. Nice. So in terms of your podcast, Jonathan, Baseline Intelligence podcast, which you've had some great guests. I mean, you mentioned Jessica, you've had Rajiv as well, Rajiv Ram, Craig O'Shaughnessy, we just talked about, Nick Saviano, Carlos and Josh Goffey. I might be mispronouncing that, but when did you start it? And like, what made you think about starting a podcast, which not everyone does?
Right. So kind of in December, I actually had a friend, his name's Clay Davis, and he's got his own Instagram page. It's kind of about self-improvement, help, and he's got a newsletter. And he was kind of like, you know what? He's like, I'm going to start a podcast. And I was like, oh, that seems like a good idea. Like I'll practice on me, like interview me first, like just get your reps in, like figure out how to go. And then I was like, maybe, I don't know, seems like a cool thing. Maybe I could try. And so I started looking at tennis podcasts. I came across yours. I've listened to Great Base before. I was like, man, yeah, these are helpful. And at the time I was only coaching about 6 to 7 hours a day. So maybe like 11 to 6. I was like, I got a lot of time in the morning and I could definitely do this and I'll get to interview cool people and I'll get to learn from them. Even if I only learn 2 things every time, that's incredible. I'll learn 50 to 100 things a year and all these great people will come and just share their knowledge. Like that's an amazing amazing thing. So, around Christmas, I interviewed Jesse and Rajiv. I played doubles with Rajiv growing up. I actually lived with Jessie when she was 7 years old. When I was in Hilton Head, I told you at Smith Stearns, I lived with their family for a year and then the summer. So I had known her for a long time.
Wow.
So I started with them and then started with some coaches I knew. And it's been great. Like I said, I've learned so many things from a player perspective, from a coaching perspective. And like I said, I also have a new appreciation for people who have well-established podcasts because it's a lot of work. It's not easy, and it's not easy editing. And I don't know if you get stressed when you're doing yours, but I'm always like, man, is this episode good enough? Like, are these people going to learn something? Is it entertaining? And did my questions stink? I hate the sound of my own voice. You start going through like these things, and
yeah.
But it's been fun. I've only done 5 episodes so far. I'm planning on doing 2 a month, and just trying to get quality guests who can. My goal is someone listens to the 30-minute episode and then goes, that concept really made sense to me. I'm going to use that, and then they go and they get better. That's kind of my goal for the podcast.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Really happy that you started, and you have a lot of great connections, like you said, with the people that you've been around. So definitely want people to check out your podcast. Of course, we'll have the link to it on the show notes page. I guess so far, can you highlight maybe like 1 or 2 of your favorites, conversations, or just like in general, like topics that you've been talking about with a couple of your guests?
Craig's episode, the 3rd episode, he's been on a ton of podcasts before, but he gives so much incredible information about the first 4 shots, coming to the net. Those are things I encourage everyone to pay attention to. Saviano had a good little tip at the end. It was actually a response to an Instagram question. And the question was, what do you do on days when you're not playing the way you normally do? And his response was, you don't lose your talent. So when you're not playing well, when you're not playing well, it's not like you woke up and all of a sudden you're incapable of hitting the same way. Like something has changed. So you can problem solve. And usually what that something is a mindset, and you're not kind of in that flow state. But I really like the way he presented it, because I think that's the panic from a lot of people. Oh my God, what's going on with my serve? Why isn't it here today? Yeah. Well, you've hit 1 million serves. You know how to serve. What's different is you're probably a little tense today. You're probably really worried about the outcome. And so he gave some great advice on how to get back in the present, thinking about your targets, split stepping every time. Something that just gets you into the now, so you're in a little bit more of a flow state. But I really like the way he just kind of, it's true. I mean, you don't just lose your talent overnight. So there's a reason why you're not hitting it as well. Take your time, calm down, start with your mentality, and then kind of go from there. I thought that was a great one. And then, on the player side, Jesse and Rajiv, I find it interesting. They talk about, nerves and doubting themselves. And Rajiv was kind of like, man, I like being nervous. Like, that means I care, nice. And I think that's something that so many people run away from. I don't want to be nervous. That's a bad thing. Nerves are bad. Oh my God, I got so tight. I got so nervous. And, nerves mean you care. And then you manage how that affects your performance, right? You channel that into something positive. But I really liked his perspective as well on that's something that he's excited that he still has at age 37.
Love that. Yeah. And a lot of great advice there. And again, it shows the quality of the information being put on your podcast. So definitely one to listen to. Yeah. Nick's answer reminded me about, have you heard of David Goggins before?
Yeah, certainly have.
Yeah. I kind of want to imitate him, but I won't. But, he has this like this cookie jar method, which reminded me of Nick's advice about like, that you don't lose your talent. I mean, it's kind of related. I guess it's like, when you're going through a tough time, you kind of go into the cookie jar, and what you're doing is you're like remembering previous victories, or in this case that, you're able to execute on things. And that can really help you kind of reset yourself. So really
I like that. I haven't heard that one. That's good.
Yeah. His book is really good. Really interesting. Good stuff. So in terms of, your future plans and everything, like what's kind of next for you?
It's a great question. I'm definitely going to continue with the podcast and the Instagram stuff. But again, like I told you, I started the Instagram with no plan. Like it's not a business for me. It's like, oh, cool, I've got followers, but I don't really know where I'm going with that. I'm going to keep putting out hopefully content that helps people.
Mm-hmm.
The podcast, I definitely plan on continuing to do and continuing to learn myself and hopefully sharing that with other people. As a coach, I mean, at the end of the day, like what I'm really passionate about is coaching. And I hope that comes through in the podcast or my videos or just the kids I work with, but it's not work for me. I don't feel like I work right now. So I'll continue to coach. I've got a bunch of good players that I work with privately, a bunch of nice kids I work with kind of in a group setting. And that's really where my passion is. So, I still see myself being on court 8 to 10 hours a day. And, they always make fun of me. I mean, I shouldn't get as excited as I do when I see little improvements. Like they're not even excited. And I'm like, man, your serve, man, it looks so much better. And they're like, really? That makes you that happy? And I'm like, yeah, sadly it does.
That's
so yeah,
cool.
I'm gonna keep coaching, the juniors and spending time out there. And we'll see what happens with the podcast and the Instagram, if that turns into anything different. But yeah, just continue coaching and enjoying it.
I'm curious what your like how you are able to get yourself going. Like, obviously we don't wake up every single day like with 100% energy and all that. So like on days where might be tough for you, what do you do to get yourself in the proper mindset?
It's a good question, and I would say this isn't by choice. I think it's just how you're wired. I don't have many days like that. I really don't.
Nice.
I don't wake up and go, man, I got 10 hours today, man. Like, oh, that's tough. I have days where I'm physically tired. I mean, standing on court. So right now, my normal schedule is 7 to 9 and in the morning, and then like 11 to 6 or 11 to 7. And so it's 10 hours. It's 7 to 7. I get there, it's dark. I leave, it's dark. It's a lot. There's a lot of people out there that do that. And sometimes I'll wake up tired. The good news for me is like once I see the kid, if they're motivated, I instantly have energy.
Nice.
And so when the kid brings that, it's like there's no way I'm ever going to be tired with a motivated kid. So they kind of fuel me. Like I can't even take credit for that. Like when they come out at 7 a.m. and they're excited, I'm like, man, this is great. Let's go. I'm immediately awake. So I think I get a lot of that from the kids.
And then what do you do if your kid is not motivated? Like, do you do anything in particular to get them motivated?
It's interesting. I've heard coaches kind of go both ways. Like, is that the coach's responsibility to motivate the kid? Or is that the player's responsibility to bring their own motivation and their own attitude? I tend to be on the second side of that. I expect you to come motivated. And like you said, I mean, most coaches, okay, you have to motivate yourself too. And then I have to figure out how to get you better. And if I also have to figure out how to get you to try, well, what's your job? Like, what do you do in the whole process? So,
yeah,
where I stand for it is like, hey, you show up ready to work and trust that I have thought about your game all night long. And I took down notes and I'm showing up at your lesson and I'm going to try to give you the best hour you can. And if you're not motivated, there's a good chance we probably won't be working together because number one, that's going to be an energy drain for me. And I only have so many hours and I'd like to coach people who are motivated. And it's not like there's no hard feelings there. It's just, I'm not looking, you can't get better without that motivation. So if I'm teaching you a lesson and I know we can't get better, then what are we doing out there? So the good news for me is all the people I work with right now have incredible motivation. They have great attitudes. They all want to learn. So I don't really have that problem. But I rely on them to bring that themselves.
Yeah. Definitely agreed there. So, in terms of like coaching, have you seen any like big mistakes? Like, I guess I'll reframe it. What are the biggest mistakes that you've seen coaches make?
Whew. Good question. And I'll just have to think about what I do all the time where I coach. I think over coaching is a big one. That's one I have to stop myself. I always want to help. I always want to say something. Sometimes you just need to shut up. The kid knows what they did. Let them work it out themselves. You don't have to say something every time. I think that's a big one. Just always feeling like you need to say something. Another mistake I see in coaching is just a lack of preparation. I mean, if a lesson shows up and you don't have a plan for what you're going to do, I think you're already behind the 8 ball. And I've had kids before say, "Oh man, you planned our practice." And I'm like, well, who doesn't? Like, you don't need to tell me who your coach was that didn't, but man, that's kind of shocking. Like, you got to show up with a plan. You got to spend time outside of that lesson, looking at the stroke or looking at their match and really spending time figuring out what's going on. So when you get to that hour, you can get right into it and maximize your time. The only other thing I'd say, and again, this is something I'm guilty of, is just keeping everything completely on the process. So what does saying good shot mean? Like, why did I even say that? Like, now I'm just making the kid think about the outcome of the point instead of maybe I could applaud the process. Hey, great footwork, great job getting in position there. Oh, and they hit a winner. Okay, but I don't need to necessarily applaud them for that. Or, hey, great pre-shot routine. That was awesome. And sometimes I will fall into the habit of just saying, "Oh, great shot, great point." And, I think back to myself and I go, wow, what a great comment. What a great coaching comment. You said great point, super, super instructive. So I think applauding the process is a big one, not over coaching for sure. And then just making you show up with a plan and you're prepared.
Yeah. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So exactly. as far as your process for preparing, what is it?
So a lot of times, I get home at night, usually after 7, I look at the schedule and go, okay, I've got these 4 lessons. So I sit down and I have my notes from their last lesson. Hey, what did we work on? How did it go? Did I say anything that resonated with them? Oh, okay, we talked about this. That's great. I might have watched them in the group play points and see something that popped up. And I go, okay, I want to make sure I allocate 15 minutes of time for that. If it's a technical thing the kid's working on, I'll go back and look at the video from the last lesson and then compare that to previous and go, okay, yeah, I want to make sure that, they keep thinking about this, but I really just sit down there. I'll make a note on my phone and I'll go, okay, Logan, here's what we're going to do. We're going to work on taking the ball on the rise for the first 10, 15 minutes. And then we're going to work on your transition volley footwork. And then we're going to work on your overhead. And then we're going to go to serves. And, the one thing I'm terrible at is sticking to a time. I'm like every other coach. I say, hey, 3 more balls and it turns into 30. And I hate myself for that, but it's what I'm doing. And, but yeah, I kind of use that process. I just sit down and I think for 10, 15 minutes about each kid. And then I'll plan the group practice kind of similarly and go, hey, what's something that every kid needs to get better at today? We need to do more overheads and lobs. Okay. We're going to do 20 minutes in the beginning on this drill. And then we'll work that same theme into points where they come into the net more. So they get some live reps with that stuff. So really just, I spend a lot of time thinking about it. And like I said, it's not work. So to me, that's fun. It's like watching TV. I'm sitting there at night. I'm going, man, how am I going to get this kid better tomorrow? It's fun for me, legitimately.
That's so cool. I love to hear that. I wish all coaches were like that. It's kind of like a very niche, or I don't know how to term it, very specific question, but like, what do you use to take notes? Is it like a notebook or your phone, like some app? Like, what do you do with that, or how?
I'm at the point now. I mean, like you said, I'm not tech savvy, but like if I handwrite something, like my wrist will cramp in like 3 minutes. Like I can't remember the last time I like hand wrote something. So I am pretty organized. So like I have folders on my computer. I typed out what the practice was. I might go back and make a little note. That drill worked well. The kids hated this drill. They didn't understand it, or I didn't explain it correctly. So I kind of have a list daily. I could go back and say, hey, what did I do with Vivian on February 7th, 2021? We did these drills. Got it. And so I just have it on my computer. I type it up and it holds me accountable. I think coaches can get lazy and you fall into, I've done these same 4 or 5 drills now for a month. Like, no wonder the kid is bored and not engaged. Like, I've got to mix it up, but I just type it up, keep it in folders so I can recall. And, that system's worked pretty well for me.
Very nice, Jonathan. And then in terms of the fitness for your students, I'm curious, how much of that do you handle versus how much of that are you outsourcing, or, having the student just go to a strength and conditioning or, other fitness coach?
So, I coach at a Sneed Farm that's in Sneed Farm Country Club. It's Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. We have a small academy there, Rise Academy, which actually we have a bunch of really good national players actually for how small it is. But we have a local track coach from Charleston Southern. She comes out and she kind of works them out with some speed stuff. A lot of them go to their own personal private trainers. But one thing I learned, I got to do 3 summers in Las Vegas with Gil Reyes for a USTA college camp. Nice. And he's amazing. And he would tell me stories about Andre and kind of how he used to train. And he told me a story that Andre went to see Carl Lewis and, hey, Carl, how can I get faster? And so Carl came and watched him, and Andre was like, okay, we practice. And now I go run these sprints and I do X, Y, and Z. And Carl was like, well, why would you run sprints? Like, what were you doing in practice? Like, your practice wasn't good enough. It wasn't intense enough. And that one hit home for me. Like, of course you're going to do off-court stuff, but the best way to learn a tennis specific movement is just to do it with intensity while you're practicing. Like, why? Yes, you need some extra, but if you feel like, man, I'm not getting anything out of my tennis workout, then you might need to re-examine that workout. But we do outsource it. I don't do any of that. I think there are people that know far more than I do. And, I want to spend my time on court with what I'm better at, which is helping them with their serve or their tactic or their emotions, and then leave a professional, to work on their speed or whatever. And I'll give my input if people ask what I see on the court. But I think it's better to, there are people that know far more than me about that stuff.
Got it. So it's just kind of specific to like amateur 3-5 to like 5-0 tennis players. But if you could kind of package, it's kind of tough, but like what's your advice for, strategy for amateur players? Like what if there was some sort of philosophy or approach that you could tell them to pursue, like what would that be?
In terms of singles or doubles?
Oh yeah, of course I should have said that. Let's go with singles and then let's tackle doubles after that.
Okay. So at the 3-5 level, especially, but even up until 5-0, I tell my people to quit trying to do so much. Like, why are you so obsessed with hitting deep in a corner? Like, why do you think you have to make your opponent miss? They're going to miss for free in 4 shots. Like, you don't have to, all you got to do is just give them the chance by making it. So I'm very big on like the baby step. Like, can you make your serve and not double fault? Great. That's step 1. Can you make your +1 ball? Great. They might complain that it wasn't fast or deep enough. I don't care. If you make 2 balls, that's pretty good, And so my advice to them is always to just, you don't have to do so much. Like, you don't have to think that you've got to hit these amazing shots. Your average shot is really good. Just put it in play, pick a big target, move your feet, and be very comfortable hitting a ball 1 square out of the sweet spot that lands on the service line. That's a good shot. I'm not going to lie and tell you it's an amazing shot, but it's a really good shot. And I think once people understand that and they go, oh yeah, you're right. Like, I love when they walk off the court and they're like, I didn't play that well, but I won. And I always say, no, you didn't hit the ball well, but I'm assuming you played well, because that means you competed, you used the right strategy. There's a big difference there. And for me, those are the rewarding matches. Man, I won the match, but I didn't hit it well. Hitting it well is kind of like the bonus, and that feels good and it's more fun. But just making balls, keep it simple. Quit trying to feel like you need to do so much. I got to hit winners on my 4-0 opponent. You don't. They're going to miss. They're going to give it to you. Just let them.
Yeah. You reminded me of, because I taped and put one of my singles matches on YouTube. It was just a set, and I was watching and I was like, not really doing anything special here. Like, nothing looks amazing at all, but, found a way to win. But it doesn't, it's not that complicated, I guess. And then in terms of doubles, what's your advice there?
It's a good question. There's lots of different ways to play. I would say similarly, you want to make the first 2 balls. A little bit of a difference for me in doubles, though, is I'd much prefer you to be on offense after the serve or return, especially as the level goes up. So it's really tough to be at the net if your partner has a weak serve. And it's also tough to go up to the net when your partner is floating a short return, because now you're kind of a sitting duck. So I do think in doubles, it's a little more practical to think offensively, but you still have to balance it because you don't want to go so reckless that you're missing so many balls. And that's kind of where your own level of awareness has to go. Man, is my risk worth the reward? But in doubles, for sure, you want to be on offense when the serve and the return are finished. Am I on offense? And if you are, you're probably doing pretty well. And if you're on defense, that's kind of going to be tough sledding. So, attacking second serve returns, using your first serve as a weapon, those two are big. The other thing I would say is there's lots of ways to play doubles. So at Duke, we had 2 players and they weren't great volleyers. They weren't great servers, but they had awesome ground strokes. And we said, okay, you guys can go to the net to pick up a ball when you miss one in the net. Other than that, you're going to serve and stay back. You're going to return and stay back. And at first they really didn't like it. And they went like 9-1 at 3 doubles in the ACC. And these teams would come and play them and just implode. And so play to your strengths. If you're a good volleyer, by all means, get to the net. But if you go, man, my volleys stink and my forehand's awesome, guess what? Stay back and crack forehands at people. That's an awesome way to win, So don't get pigeonholed into thinking there's one way. Play to your strengths.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree more. That's my game, pretty much like your number 3 doubles team. Just kind of cracking forehands. That's kind of after I serve, which is not classic, obviously, way of doing things. But a couple of things that have helped me so much are just kind of my movement, like even off the ball, and just being more aggressive, like when I'm at the net, putting pressure on the individual, like even if I don't get a racket on the ball, just the moving part makes them think. And then also just calling more plays and varying up the different formations has really helped a lot. But one thing with doubles that we talked to our kids yesterday about was, let's say you're in a 1-up 1-back situation, whether it's a serve or return, and you see the ground stroke person. Let's say I'm at the net and you're on the baseline about to hit a ball, right? And I see that you're in trouble. Well, where do I think you're going to hit the ball? I think you're going to try to go to my baseline partner, right? Yes. Cross court. Okay. Yes. So then why am I not poaching? If I'm convinced you're going to go cross court, and I know the ball's going there, why do I not want to be where the ball is? And then conversely, right? Well, what if you got a short ball and you're in the court facing me? Where do I think you're going to go? I think you're going to try to hit me. Yeah. So I'm going to back up a step and I'm going to get my backhand volley ready to go. And it's going to be like a ball feed. It's actually going to be really easy. So I think just paying attention. And if you find yourself in that situation and you don't want the ball, that's where you have to ask yourself, number one, do I want to go work on my volleys more? Or should I just back up to the baseline? Because if you know the ball's going cross court and you don't want to poach, that's telling you something. Yeah, definitely. And it's kind of funny. As we're talking about these sort of predictable situations, in doubles matches, like whenever as the baseline person, when I'm like leaning back in a defensive position, if I'm comfortable, I'll actually go down the line and I'll pass them all the time because they're poaching. So I really enjoy doing that. And then also a lot of times when I play the deuce side and the server hits a first serve up the tee, I actually will go down the line sometimes too, because they know that my backhand's not as strong as my forehand, so they're going to poach. And then but a lot of good points there, Jonathan. Did you prefer singles or doubles when you were playing?
I mean, I preferred doubles. I liked them both. I had more success. Rajiv and I did really well in juniors, and so I mean, obviously everybody enjoys winning, but I liked having a teammate. I thought that was fun. Yeah. And I also liked, singles. There's lots of things that can happen, right? Like a guy can drop shot. Like how many drop shots do you see in doubles? Not many, right? Because there's a guy at the net. Like that doesn't really make sense. So for me, it's like doubles, there's only a few options. And if I'm smart enough, it's like I felt like I could control the other 3 people in the court. And I knew what they were going to do because their options are limited because of where people are standing. There's one at the net. So you're not going to hit a drop shot down the line to the net player. So I really liked the tactical side of that, of being able to predict what would happen and having a counter for that and feeling like I was winning that chess match. Of course, you can do that in singles as well. But I enjoyed sharing that with my partner more. Hey, we're going to serve him here and they're going to return down the line. And then we'll hit the volley down the middle and they'll lob us and we'll hit a little angled overhead where they're not. And then we'll ask one of our dads to go get the ball for us, and that'll be fun. I really liked that part of it. But obviously singles too, you get to play every ball and you're out there by yourself and you get to ask yourself questions about how competitive you are and how you can hold up under pressure. That's great. But for me, I always had a passion for doubles.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's really fun. Do you have any favorite plays, like one or two of your favorite doubles plays that you use?
So one play that we started using at Duke quite a bit in the ad court, we would go I formation. And the play was, we would kind of serve backhand body, assuming the returner was right-handed. So it'd be kind of a wider serve. And the net person technically was covering the left side of the court. But what they would do is they would pop up and actually take a small step to the right. The server would then go to the right and cover the down the line as well. But when you serve wide, that angle return is really difficult. And so we were asking the returner to not only go down the line, but go down the line with a small window. If it got by my net man, it's a forehand for the server, which is great.
Yep.
And if it goes to the net player, it's probably a forehand volley, which most people are better with. And we used to run that play, I don't know, at least 60, 70% of the time in the ad. And really the only people that could kind of get us out of that were people that could chip lob cross court. So that's the best way to defend that. But if you have a good serve and you're serving backhand body and that net player, even though technically they're covering the left side of the court, they almost pinch to the right, you give that returner a really small target.
Yeah.
Another thing I would say too about plays though, is like, if you don't have a good serve, there's not a whole lot. There's not a whole lot of plays that can help you. I mean, the returner can do whatever they want, and then you're just guessing, and the net guy's on defense. So, you do have to make sure you have a good serve when you're calling a play. But yeah, we used that one at Duke, and that one worked all the time. It was fantastic.
Love that. Thank you for that. I'm going to use that tonight, maybe.
Yeah. Let me know how it goes.
I will. So I got to ask you, I know we've been chatting for a while, so hopefully you don't mind, but so you have a Liverpool jersey on. I should have had my Tottenham jersey on, but they did horribly today. But just curious, how did you get into to supporting Liverpool?
So I watched a documentary on them. I think it was like on Fox Sports, probably like 7 years ago. And I'll watch any sports documentary. Like I'm in, like you've got me. And so I kind of knew the players, and they started showing games on the weekends. And I think at the time they were like 6th in the league, but I knew the history and I'm like, oh, okay, they've done well. Like they've got money, like they're probably not going to be bad forever. And hey, it might be nice to pick a team that could actually win. I follow the Jets, New York Jets. They lose every year. It's all they do. I don't have an NBA team. So like I watch these teams lose. I was like, you know what? I need to pick a winner. So I picked Liverpool. They've been awesome. I watch their games all the time. Soccer is an amazing sport. And, with not only all the European competitions, but the Premier League. And then you've got, national team stuff. Like there's always games going on. It's 2 hours or less, you can mow through it pretty quickly. But I've got some, Tottenham, I got a bunch of friends who like Tottenham, and, you guys can just keep cheering for that 6th to 7th place team and enjoying it,
I'll have to correct you. Now they're in 8th because Wolves leapfrogged. It's just terrible. But we have some games at hand. But please connect me with your friends, Tottenham supporters, so we can all cry together.
Commiserate.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, you guys have, Salah, who's like the best player right now, I think, probably in the world, arguably. And you guys stole Luis Diaz from us. We were supposed to get him. Yep. We needed him so much more than you guys. And you got Mane. And
my favorite thing about it too.
Yeah.
Like my favorite thing too is like, as the coach in me, whenever I'm cheering for these teams, I'm always watching the coach.
Klopp.
So Jurgen Klopp, like he's amazing.
He's amazing.
Not only his tactics, whatever, which I'm not a soccer, I don't exactly know exactly what he's doing, but the way he manages players, the way the team plays with enthusiasm. Like, man, that guy knows how to manage people. And that's also a skill in coaching. So the coach in me really likes watching him do work, but yeah, I mean, they're a great team and I enjoy watching them.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoy watching him too, actually. Klopp is a great coach. And I'll have to send you, there's a video where there's just like a random guy who is like a presenter or something. And then Klopp like evaluates his game, like, his striking and dribbling and all that stuff, penalty shooting. So that was pretty cool. But all right, I guess enough of that about the Premier League, just because we're a tennis podcast, but I wanted to get that in and I like your jersey. So cool. So Jonathan, what are 3 books? And, we talked about Peak, which we'll link in the show notes page, but what are 3 books that you would give to a friend to help them improve their tennis game? And they don't have to be, specifically tennis books.
3 books. Okay. Well, Peak would be the first one. We already talked about that. I just had, like I said, Carlos Goffi, who coached McEnroe, back in the day from a junior to being number 1 in the world. He's got a book called Tournament Tough. And there's lots of great stuff in there. He's talked about it in podcasts before. He's actually doing an online instructional platform that's coming out, relatively soon. But his book has some awesome things about what happens in between the points, pressure points, how you should be playing. And that's the side of the game to me that's like super interesting. Third book. That's a great question. I'd have to get back to you on a third one. Those 2 for me are right now the ones that I would go right away. Go read Peak, go learn how you should be practicing in general, and then go read Carlos's book. It's been out forever, but a lot of this stuff still applies, and you're on a good start with those 2 for sure.
Nice. Do you like Inner Game?
Yeah, I do. I read that one a long time ago, and I still go back and read it, and that's a great one. That's the cool thing about rereading. And I don't know if you do the same thing, but I've got notes on all these books. And so I go back and kind of reread my notes and I go, got sloppy. Like there's another, concept that I learned from this book that I'm not implementing on a daily basis. So yeah, Inner Game obviously is a fantastic book.
Nice. The other day last night, I was listening to a podcast by Lewis Howes, School of Greatness, fantastic podcast. And he was having a episode on, I guess Bob Proctor, who unfortunately passed away, but Bob Proctor said that, if you want to change yourself, like what he did when he wanted to change a habit is he had like a page of a book bookmarked, and he would like reread that page like every day, to help reprogram himself. So I find that was interesting.
Interesting. A page of the book that was telling you what to do, or just like resetting yourself habit wise. I'm going to read that page and move forward.
Oh, it was, I was telling him like what to do. Like, so for example, like, maybe like waking up early or something like that, how to do that. So he would just read that every day. I don't think that was it, but just an example. Yeah. So yeah. So that was really cool. Awesome, Jonathan. Well, where should people go to connect with you?
So, you can find me, like I said, on Instagram. It's @Stokke Tennis. I take messages on there. I think I have my email on there as well. The podcast is on every platform, just like any other podcast. But yeah, most people reach out directly to me through Instagram. And I respond to everybody. Sometimes it takes me a while, but if anyone takes the time to reach out, I'll definitely respond. And then, you can find me in Charleston at Sneap Farm and a member of Rise Academy. I think we have a website for that, Rise Academy, but any of those ways. But yeah, you'll find me online. I'm shooting out a video every morning around 7 a.m. and, hoping that one of them clicks with anyone out there to help them get better at the game.
Awesome, Jonathan. And to close, what is one key tip that you can give our audience to help them improve their tennis games?
One, I only get one, and it does need to be something different than what I've said so far.
No, it does not. I mean, if it's something that you really feel is like the biggest takeaway or something, and you've said it before, like that's fine as well.
And you're only going to give me one. That's hard.
I give you 2 if you want.
Give me a 1A and a 1B. Okay.
1A, 1B. Smart.
my 1A, and it's from Craig, but it's something I've always believed, is make the first 2 balls you touch. Just make 2. I made my serve and my +1. I made my return and my +1. Quit getting so picky about how deep it was or how fast. Make 2 balls. That's awesome. That always applies. The second thing is spend time on your mental game. And that means something different to everybody, whether it's I get angry. Okay, work on managing your emotions. I can't pick up on patterns. Then you should be spending time on, remembering what happened the last point and writing it down and developing that habit. But it's just such an underutilized part of people's game and they don't practice it. So making 2 balls, but also I got to get something in about the mental side because it's just so under practiced.
Got it, Jonathan. Well, thank you very much for your time. I really enjoyed speaking with you. I just really want to acknowledge you for your passion for the game and for, helping your students reach their potential, and really do appreciate it. And it was really cool to connect because I do remember, that when I was a junior, like seeing your name, the big national tournaments and super nationals. So really cool to see you do great things in tennis. And, like I said, definitely everybody check out Jonathan's Instagram page and the Baseline Intelligence podcast if you want to improve your game. So thanks again, Jonathan, and great speaking with you, and hopefully we'll connect again soon.
Yeah, man, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, man. All right. I really hope that you enjoyed my interview with Coach Jonathan Stokke. And remember, this is part 1. So part 2 is coming next week. If you just downloaded this anyway, as soon as it came out. Obviously, if you check it out, a week or more after this episode has been published, and you can listen to part 2 right away. So definitely check that second part out. And if you enjoy the Tennis Files podcast and you enjoyed this episode, then I would really appreciate it if you would leave a review for the show. And you can do that at tennisfiles.com/Apple Podcasts, or do that in your favorite podcast app of choice. But Apple Podcasts is definitely the way to go in terms of having the biggest impact on the show, its rankings, and henceforth bringing the show, making it more visible to more people as a result of the higher rankings. So thanks so much in advance for that. And thanks to all of you for doing so who already have. I think we're, well over 100 reviews and ratings so far. So that's fantastic. And I would like to leave you with a quote, as I often do at the end of the show. And this one is by Jared Leto. And Jared said, "Try and fail, but never fail to try." Really love that quote. And I think, as I mentioned, we will have all the links mentioned in today's podcast in the show notes page, or on it rather. So thanks a lot for listening. Check out part 2 of this interview. And until then, have a great one. And I'll see you on the next episode of the Tennis Files podcast. This is Mirvan Aranchad signing out.